is the Vintage RPG Podcast, your source for the best in classic and contemporary RPGs. With your hosts, Hambone and Stu.
Welcome to Vintage RPG Podcast, coming at you again from the clubhouse hidden somewhere in the swamps of New Jersey. I'm John Hambone McGuire, and with me, as always, is the founder and publisher of Unwinnable. There's no joke today because we've got two killer guests. David Hoskins and Luke Gearing is here to talk about their new RPG coming to Kickstarter on February 6th, Swyvers. How's it going, dudes?
Yeah, pretty good, man.
Good.
Yeah. We can immediately hit the thorny topic of how you pronounce it as well.
So for the listeners, I want them to know that I have been practicing this in my head. Dave had some problems with the audio coming into this, and I was like, okay, cool. I'm getting ready to say it, and then I say it wrong. That's
well, it's Middle English, so you could kind of make it up. Because nobody speaks it anymore. So I've been saying it's Swyvers for a while, but I don't. There's no. I don't know. If there's an agreed upon correct way of saying it.
Wait, did you say Swyvers?
I said Swyvers.
Nice, I corrupted you.
You did. You said it wrong, and then it stuck. I blame you mostly.
Oh my God, I'm sorry. That was it. It really is like a mind parasite. Jeez.
So what I think is really cool about this, if you go to the website Swyvers.com, you're going to see some amazing art up front, but this is supposed to be a new tabletop role-playing game of heists and horrors through the streets of a rotten city. So tell us about it. This sounds amazing right off the bat.
Yeah, so it started a long time ago, just as a little hack of a kind of BX history. It kind of grew out of that, where it was what if it was more urban rather than dungeons, and then it kind of became more about crime. So it's ended up there's no classes. You're all some variety of thief. You're all out here just trying to make it by. There's kind of a big faux London setting that you kind of generate for each campaign rather than having a specific one. The idea being that you use all these tables, you roll it up, you find what's interesting to you, and also kind of keeping some of that unknowability to it, as well as if you rolled it all up, you're going to know it a lot closer as the GM. But yeah, you play as horrible rogues trying to get two pennies to rub together. And there's horrible stuff that lives underground. There's lots of horrible people who live in big houses full of stuff for you to nick. Yeah, I think it's good.
Does it retain the BX sort of base, or is it just a ground up new system?
Pretty divorced from that now. You could backport it if you wanted to. Rather than having your standard 6 stats, it's just got the physical ones. Because I stopped using kind of intelligence, wisdom, charisma a long time ago. I just prefer to leave that kind of up to the player. I think that's kind of more interesting often. You don't get levels in the same, there is leveling up, but you don't get a huge amount for it. It's much more about what stuff you can afford. So there's a mechanical kind of difference between a really cheap nasty knife and a really nice sick fancy one that you've either stolen or bought somewhere. And just lots of little changes and hacks from there. Armor kind of helps absorb damage instead of just making you harder to hit. Your armor class is based on how long your weapon is or whatever, as well as that determining your initiative.
Interesting.
And then we stripped out magic entirely, so instead you play blackjack to cast a spell.
That is awesome.
Yeah, very happy with that, how it turned out. Because there's a lot of games that's magic's risky and you have to push your luck, and then it's a dice roll, which is fine, but you're not pushing your luck in terms of directly. You're just taking a chance on the roll table. This way you get to be oh man, I've got I've got a 16. Do I hit it on the off chance that I get under 21 and get the spell off, or do I hit it and risk going over and having something awful happen to me?
Now, do you include rules for actually how to play blackjack in the actual game? Because granted, yeah, Google, right? You can go.
Oh Google. Yeah, it explains it's just playing 21. But it is explained there, how you
cool.
And you can hit or stick and whatnot.
Do you hit on a 16? I was never very good at blackjack. I feel like that's a terrible idea, odds wise.
Well, it depends how much you need the spell to go off, doesn't it?
True. So how does it work? Is there a threshold to get the spell off? You have to hit 21?
So to get a spell off, you're looking between 17 and 20 for a sort of standard success.
Okay.
To get a super powerful success, you're looking for a 21. Anything over that is a critical failure. So you roll on the big table of horrible stuff. If you get under that, you can be I've got 15 already. I'm going to stand, lose access to the spell for the rest of the die. for the day, but you don't get a critical failure because you
Mhm.
didn't bust out over the top. You just kind of backed out. So you get a bit more kind of scope in that. You kind of decide how far you want to go.
I can almost I could feel how that feels like in the fiction, like you're kind of like building up energy, and then like you feel like it's getting out of control, and you back off, and like you take a deep breath, and like the energy dissipates. There's like a narrative to that. I like that a lot.
Yeah, and it let you because after that we were like, okay, well, there's 4 suits of cards and there's 4 humors, so that kind of ties in nicely. And from there, you can then have each card as like a specific kind of spell component. So like the 5 of Hearts, oh, that represents fresh Stork's legs. So like if you go in game and find some Stork's legs, you can just count as always having a 5 of Hearts to use up that kind of component. So it kind of expands itself outwards quite nicely depending how deep you want to get into it.
Cool.
I mean, to me, like right off the cuff, this is one of the coolest, like simply elegant in its own way, but like bonkers off the wall way to do magic in an RPG I've ever heard. And I've seen some shit. Like, this is awesome. And like, I really think thematically it ties in so perfectly with the overarching theme of this adventure.
It's one of those things that the idea is so good and it works so well that it aggravates me that it hasn't been done before. And I'm like thinking like, oh, it's sort of like there's a little bit of like the way Deadlands uses a deck of cards and stuff, but like this is so like simple, and like Hambone said, like it fits in perfectly, and the way you kind of expand it with the spell, like all of it just nests really satisfyingly together, and and of course that makes me mad for some reason. I don't know why.
Yeah, I think it's it's the magic's kind of like it's like a hidden thing that like because there's also a lot of stuff with like there's kind of like a very overbearing kind of church that's present. So witchcraft's very illegal. So like not only are you taking a risk casting the spell, like even having the knowledge is kind of dangerous in of itself if you get found out. So it's kind of there's a real push and pull going on with it. But generally, I've found whenever somebody does get access to it, they're always going to try and play with it because it's fun. They want to know what happens.
The spell descriptions help with that too. They're pretty out there and evocative, and like a ton of flavor. There's not just like a knock spell or a fireball, or it's all like one gently turns the person inside out for X amount of rounds, and one
Oh, that's awesome.
yeah, one could age you anywhere from like a day to 300 years or something. And if you get a big result, like it goes like it spreads exponentially. The magic is dangerous, like the way it feels in like Lankmar to me.
Now
like it's very mysterious.
But like Lankmar, magic is not the focus of the game. The focus of the game is
Exactly.
actually thievery and roguish sort of antics. Do you bring a sort of similar sort of approach to like the thief abilities? Do you have a whole bunch of them?
So when I run games, I really like to do the whole kind of like talking to the players about it more than kind of a skill roll. For me, like the skill rolls, that's like the fallback. But like if a player can like talk around it, like then we'll just kind of skip the whole roll part.
Mhm.
So if you're a guy who's like some stuff like lock picking, like yeah, sure, that's going to be a roll. Like there's no easy way around that one. Like the focus is more on like, oh, like you've got a bunch of tables so you can roll up what's in like a random guy's house real quick. Or you've got a lot of consequences for a lot of different kind of stuff you sell. So yeah, like the focus outside of the magic isn't so much on like the kind of mechanical implementation of stuff, just more giving you as the GM like a lot of toys to play with and for the players to bump into and be like, damn, what the hell's that? Say for like leveling up, one of the big ways is that you can go out carousing, you can go out on the piss, and if you spend too much money, there's always consequences for that, and that can be anything from like, oh, like you think you burnt down your favorite pub, or it could be you got married when you were drunk, and that might be someone who's like useful to you, they might be kind of a problem for you, and like, yeah, it's a lot of stuff that kind of drags the players into adventure, as well as give you some tools to help run stuff, rather than a lot of like kind of mechanical aspects.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely clever because, as someone who's definitely made a lot of poor decisions while drinking, it always leads to misadventure in its own ways. And I think that RPGs as is, and not, downplaying the quality of anyone else's RPGs, but you know, there's always that thing where like it's so reliant on a specific role, which it just like starts and ends with the role. But like something like this is very exciting to me because everything you do, I think, in a game should have consequences. And this is a beautiful cascading kind of consequence where it's like, okay, you did this, but then it goes all the way to the left and then downhill quickly. That's awesome, man.
Peaks and valleys, right?
Exactly.
I think like the consequence thing's really important as well, because like the setting, the game kind of assumes like unless things go seriously wrong, like you're in this city the whole time. So like you can't just run away from it, because it's like especially like I don't know, like sci-fi games or whatever, or most like kind of fantasy games, like you're always kind of on the move, so you're not necessarily sticking around to see like the havoc you've caused. Whereas like in a city, like all the consequences stay right there. And that was quite important for us to make sure, like, yeah, like that's a thing. Like there's specific places where you burnt something down. It isn't just kind of like, oh, somewhere something burnt down, but it probably won't come up again. It's like, no, you burnt down that district, and people know you did it, and you know they're mad. So one thing we did is got a little kind of subsection about having a whatever detective gets assigned to your case, and kind of a set of tables so you can like roll up this detective to start looking into you and start trying to gather evidence against you, and kind of giving you some like GM advice on like what sort of stuff they look for, how that kind of ratchets up over time. So they're kind of literally building a case against you, calling you in for questioning, so you can do that kind of classic scene where like they don't know you've done it, but they're trying to pin stuff on you and like kind of interrogating people, which again, part of the idea of consequences, unless you have a great plan and don't leave your tracks, in which case your reward is, you know, you don't get punished.
I love that.
Yeah.
What were some of the things that inspired this? We mentioned Lankmar, which is an obvious one, I think, but are there any other particular keystones for the project?
So I grew up reading a lot of Terry Pratchett, very present in the text, I think, kind of the Discworld books, particularly the ones about the kind of City Watch. This is, as some people have said on the Melsonian Discord, it's a lot more cynical, a lot nastier, but I still think it's like present. Also played the Thief games a lot growing up, and they're very present as well. I think that's probably one of the bigger ones. Just kind of the idea of like, no, the main gameplay is like doing crime and like the kind of ramifications of that, and like who's paying you to do it and why, and kind of having a bit of a mystery to that aspect as well. For me, those are definitely the big two that stand out immediately.
David, it's interesting to me because this seems like a very English game, and you're not English.
I'm not.
But your art really, I think, marries well with the game and the setting. Did you have any particular approaches to that, or did you just wing it? Have you been to London?
I've never been, but so a lot of it, you know, we play a lot of fantasy games, and a lot of that is like Eurocentric, you know, fantasy is what we grew, you know, what I grew up with, what you grew up with, what most of us over here have grown up with. So it wasn't so much a reach, but you know, when you're flipping through, like I did kind of compile like an inspiration. Like I don't normally do this, but I did put together kind of an inspiration board for it, and like sharing it with Luke and going back and forth. And you know, a lot of the stuff, there's a lot of London in it, but there's a lot of other things too. Like there's a lot of like Swedish medieval like halberds and stuff like that, you know. Architecture wise, looking at like there's a lot of French in there. There is a lot of London, a lot of British stuff, which, you know, there's a lot of Roman influence in that too. So it's kind of a Mod Podge, because the nice thing is, even though it's got a good British feeling, like it is still fantasy, right? So you can kind of pull the visual elements that you like from everything, and I don't know, compile it a bit more. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and Luke gave me a lot of freedom to just kind of get the feel of it right, and I think I did an okay job with that. Everybody's kind of grungy. Like even the rich are, you know, like nasty. Like everybody's ugly. Everybody's a criminal, right? If you're a politician, you're a criminal.
Yeah,
like
absolutely.
That holds to this day.
Rich people are just successful, very successful criminals.
Right. And so like it just from the top to the bottom, just trying to get everybody to have that a little bit of that sinister edge, like the Swyver creation piece, and then there's another piece that kind of mirrors it, Our Souls and Adversaries. And they're, like you kind of see two sides of that coin in that piece. Definitely drew a lot more buildings than I'm used to drawing.
You said in the
Which
when we were setting up the interview that you're just like, I don't like drawing buildings, and I was sort of thinking like, this seems very building centric.
Yeah. And that's another, like, it's been a big challenge. Like I've been doing art for this. Like this game probably would have come out 2 years ago or something if I wasn't doing the art. But they let me do it, which I'm super grateful for. But it's been a super slow process, just between the amount of work, like little lines I've been doing in it. Like I haven't been doing any. I've been trying to do no gray, like so. It's all lines. Like so, if there's a gray area, it's because there's a ton of little lines, and like that was probably a mistake, like something that I set myself up for.
But the effect is really nice. It gives it like, especially the couple pictures that you showed me, they have like an interesting quality to them in the light. It feels like it's lit at how like I don't know at night especially with like floodlights, like things are really high contrast, and it just has that this is like a nighttime scene with like street lights, and the lighting really works without the gray tones. I think that you've captured something sort of essential of what I think of as the sort of the thiefy cityscape.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I still have a few more to finish. Hopefully, be all done by the time the Kickstarter wraps is kind of the plan, so that it goes into production super quick. Like Melsonia has been really good about quick turnarounds lately, so don't want this one to linger. Like it's finally coming out, so just trying to get as much done and as much crammed in there as possible. Some of the pieces have definitely been some of my favorite pieces, like the fight like a Swyver. It might be just about my most favorite thing I've ever drawn. It's like just kind of a big dog pile of people like stabbing each other.
It's awesome.
Like getting kicked and hit with like one guy is getting a club to the face, and the guy who's getting the club to the face is getting stabbed, and like a cat is jumping on a guy, and a dog is. It's just this big ball of people and like knives, and it really kind of it's like what Swyvers is when I think about it in my brain. And getting to read the book too is great. Like it's probably one of the funniest things I've ever read. It just like it really cracks you up. It's a fun RPG book to read. It's not a chore in any way, which is something that I think is really special that Luke did just such a killer job doing.
Should we tell folks what the title means?
Luke.
Well, so Swyver or Swive is Middle English for fuck. So effectively, the game is named Fuckers, which is about right for the type of characters that you usually end up playing.
It sets the stage very nicely, I think.
Yeah, there's a there's a couple of little things that people have really like really early on that are like, oh, it's this kind of book. Like characters have like a 1 in 4 chance of knowing how to read. And you have to come up with a reason in 5 seconds, or else we were wrong. You didn't know how to read. And so we have like a trinket table, which like a lot of games have done now. Very fun way to immediately kind of give you a thing to go off, especially when you don't have like a class or anything. So it's a big D100 table. So everyone's like, oh, I wonder what number 100 is. It's going to be really good. It's just a sense of pride and accomplishment. You don't actually get anything, which a lot of people will be like, oh, okay, it's like that, is it? Which is exactly the kind of tone that we're looking to set.
And totally baseless, right? Like because you're a new character.
Yeah, you got nothing.
You have a sense of pride and accomplishment. It's just hollow.
Or you get a dog, right? And like 1 out of every 100 dogs can just talk. Like that's just the way it is. Like,
yeah, some dogs talk. I think the spook line is like, was it 1 in 10,000 dogs talk, but they wouldn't have anything to say to you anyway?
Yeah,
it's true.
Yeah, which is fun. There's a couple of little bits like that kind of are threaded throughout, where there are like mentions of talking dogs elsewhere. Because again, it's most of the book's more about giving you like the sense of place and how this place operates and what it's like to be there. So like a lot of it's kind of written half in universe almost, like all of the like item descriptions. It's got like a little snippet next to it that kind of is almost like somebody from the city telling you about that thing.
And even you've got a couple pages on the website, Arseholes and Adversaries, where, right off the bat, I'm learning more about the world just by seeing like agents of the church are actually called dentists, which I think are that's so clever. Anime Dead is Shambling Harry's like, there is lore caked into all of these. Yeah, Cluster Canine Stew is called Stink Pup. Like it's all caked into the description of these characters on these pages. And
I like the vampire.
What's the vampire?
It's a Taxman.
Oh, come on, man! You've already sold me this book, but there is a you can get a quick start guide right on the website by signing up with your email address. Quick start rules on the website, which I think you're going to hear this podcast. It's going to do this game a lot of justice, but I think if you get the quick start rules, it's going to get you even faster.
Yeah, the quick start rules is very like a big thorough chunk like of the book, and it's currently free. It's like it's art-lite, so there's not all the art is placed, but and you can go to Drive-Thru RPG and get it as well.
Very cool.
The ideal game of this, is it one shots? Is it short campaigns, long campaigns? Do you see a lot of fuckers dying in the course of the game, or are they more likely to get arrested? And are there jailbreaks? Like, what's the lifespan of the
when
game,
so my friend Dan, who helped me a lot with the writing, he ran quite a long campaign of Swyvers. We did have some deaths, but they were all quite impactful because it's kind of I think there's a bit of a trick with the term high lethality. It's not that characters die all the time, it's that they can, and a lot of that can be up to you. So we managed to avoid quite a lot of character death. And I think it was like at least a year, that campaign. Like you can keep on going for quite well. Like, there's rules kind of built in for retiring, and having your like a little apprentice or putterer, as the game calls them, kind of taking over for you. So like if you wanted to commit, you could definitely run this as like a not just like a crime family, but like a crime dynasty. That said, the starter event that comes in also makes a really fun one shot that has been run to death. I can probably run it from memory at this point, so that also really nicely works. Both as like a kind of a one shot, like, oh yeah, we'll just do this, but it's got kind of a bunch of hooks off to other stuff that happens, and so consequences built in, so that it can be a great campaign starter as well. Because kind of the way I say it, like a lot of stuff that's good for one is good for the other. Like if it's a good adventure, it's a good adventure, whether that's for a campaign or a one shot. Okay, so and the other thing with kind of characters dying is there's a kind of, much like Warhammer Fantasy, there's kind of a dismemberment system. So like your characters can get quite fucked up kind of narratively, and like there's kind of a selection of prosthetic limbs to buy, which can be anything from like a wooden ear or like a kind of porcelain leg. But like one thing we want to do with that is like there's no kind of mechanical disadvantage associated with that. Like people find all kinds of different ways to do different things based on limb difference. So like we really wanted to make sure it was something that was represented mechanically, but not in the wrong ways. Do you see what I mean? Like kind of more narrative.
Yeah, totally.
That's another way that kind of keeps consequences, but doesn't mean that characters are getting wiped out left, right, and center, unless you're really messing up.
Well, very cool. So normally at this point, I ask Stu if he has any final thoughts, but Luke, David, do you have any final thoughts on Swyvers?
I know that David did a great job with the art. I know he was downplaying himself in terms of time taken, but it was being more than worth the wait. I'll tell you that much. Like, I think as an art book alone, it stands up very, very highly. So cheers for all of that, David.
Thanks. Yeah, I just think it's a lot of fun to read. It's a lot of fun to play. I don't know. Sorry, guys.
Overwhelmed
with emotion. Yes. No, it's
like
just,
a proud papa.
It's quick. It's quick. It's not super cumbersome to play. It's like it's a joy to run and play, and to read. And it's just, yeah, I am really lucky to have been a part of it.
Well, very cool. If you want to pick up Swyvers on Kickstarter, you could back it starting on February 6th. By the time this episode's dropped, the Kickstarter will have been going for a full week, and you're going to be getting a book that's definitely coming out by that point. And this is a book that is not to be missed. So this is another amazing episode of the Vintage RPG Podcast. Stu, where can people find you?
Find me on Instagram at Vintage RPG. I'm sure that Swyvers, I said it right, will be in the feed eventually.
2027, probably at this point.
Yeah,
you can find me across the internet, John McGuire RPG, mostly on Instagram, where I am posting about my latest Kickstarter, which is called Children of Uma, Enter the Dino Knights, which is actually launching tomorrow. So if you're listening to this episode on Monday, my Kickstarter launches tomorrow. If you're listening to it later in the week, my Kickstarter is in process already. And if you're listening to it a year from now, you could probably buy the book at Exalted Funeral. But check it out, Children of Uma, Enter the Dino Knights. If you like post-apocalyptic vehicles, if you like dinosaurs, let them fight. And that's what we're looking for in Enter the Dino Knights. If you like the show, don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe. Your reviews really do help other listeners to find us. And if you really like the show, why not become a patron? Patreon.com/vintagerepg. We got a behind-the-scenes look at whatever Stu's working on. We got a behind-the-scenes look at things that are going on with 321 Action. We've got a killer Discord community that we'd love for you to be a part of, as well as early release episodes. You get them at some point on like Friday or Saturday, depending on when we record them and when Alex added some. You get those for as little as $1 a month. I have a tier where you can play an RPG with me every month. Stu has a tier where you can play a West Marches game with Stu. Patreon.com/vintagerepg. So for Stu Horvath, I'm John Hambone McGuire. May the dice always roll in your favor.
Thanks for listening. Don't forget to like, review, and subscribe to the podcast. Every review helps other listeners to find us. The Vintage RPG Podcast is a ham-fisted production. Music by Dego West. Art by Schaefer Brown. If you like the podcast, you should also consider becoming a patron at patreon.com.